My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day.
And that is how the tariff wars started. And since then, we have seen tariffs on and off. We have seen escalation between allies and foes with the tariffs. We have seen a face off between China and America. We have seen trade deals. And now tariffs are back in the headlines when they are imposed on Canada and many other countries. So I decided I will expose the tariff regime. I will tell you guys the truth, what tariffs actually are, and what harm they will cause for the United States down the line. So this is going to be a very interesting video, especially for those people who are not really understanding what the tariffs are or are even supportive of tariffs. So my name is Denome, and if you like this video, consider giving it a thumbs up and consider even subscribing to the channel. And on this channel, I normally talk about crypto and my speculation on different crypto assets. But now in this video, we'll specifically only talk about the tariffs and what they are, because I have been thinking to make this video since April already. And now since the tariffs are back in the headlines, I decided I want to make this video to expose and to educate people what the tariffs actually are. The number one thing that Donald Trump says the tariffs will do is to bring back manufacturing to United States. But when we look at the reality, and this is the statistic coming straight out of the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we chart out how many people are working in manufacturing, what we can see since April when the tariffs were implemented, the amount of manufacturing jobs in the United States have actually gone down. So this is the opposite what Donald Trump has said the tariffs would do. They were supposed to bring a golden age for United States, but as of now, manufacturing has left United States, and I believe it will not go into United States. And I will go into more detail later in this video, but this is the first point. The second point is the very idea of tariffs. So if you ask Trump, he would say that tariffs actually bring money to United States from other countries. But that is a outright lie. So what is the difference between a tariff and an import tax? If you ask a Grok or if you go to Google, the answer is there is no practical difference between a tariff and an import tax. And this is important because who pays an import tax? Is it China who pays import tax? Is it Canada who pays the import tax? The answer is it is American people who pay an import tax. It is the American businesses who pay the import tax. And what this means is that if you buy a product directly from the European Union, then you have to pay an additional tax to the government of United States to receive the product. If you don't pay this tax, then it is being sent back to European Union. So you have to pay this tax or you cannot get the product. Also, if you are a manufacturer in United States, if you are importing some of the components for your product that you manufacture in United States, suddenly those components cost more money. And that is why the manufacturing in United States is going down, because manufacturing is suddenly more expensive in United States if your manufacturing relies on components coming from outside of USA. If your components are 100% produced in United States, then you might be lucky. So if you produce in United States, you can still sell for United States customers and they will benefit from the tariffs. But if you manufacture in United States and you sell back to European Union, then suddenly your products cost extra because you have this extra import cost that you now have to deal with. So that is the big lie that Donald Trump always puts out there, that it is the countries, other countries who pay this, even though it is the American people and American businesses who suffer from the tariffs. So that is the second point. Then uh, let's talk about the what happened with European Union. So then we have these different deals that Donald Trump is supposedly closing. And this deal with the European Union, where they promised to invest in United States, By the way, these numbers are most likely bogus and they don't really mean anything. But the big thing from this trade deal is that USA will have a 15% tariff for products coming from European Union, but European Union has 0% tax on products coming from United States. And what was funny about this is that many people said that they are embarrassed to be European today. I can't believe we agreed to a deal like this. And when I saw this, I was cringing myself because, from my perspective, it is the European people who won in this deal. Because if you are a European person, you have to pay 0% tax for products coming from USA. So you have to pay less taxes to European Union or to your government. Whereas if you are an American and you want to buy stuff from European Union, you have to pay an additional 15% tax. So European citizens benefited from this deal that they have to pay 0% tax. The optimal would be 0% and 0% tax, but this was the second best deal that European citizens were able to get. Now, obviously, European Union did not benefit from this because now they cannot collect more taxes from their citizens, but all in all, European citizens won and the American government won, but American citizens lost. So that is interesting to me that people are cheering for for more taxes. I found this cringeworthy and funny at the same time. Then tariffs have been weaponized, and this is a little bit crazy from my perspective. And Matt Walsh explains it beautifully here. So this is just one example, but Canada has announced that it is backing the statehood for Palestine, a two-state solution. And Donald Trump is saying that acknowledgement or announcement will make it very hard for us to make a trade deal with Canada. And Matt Walsh comes out saying this is ridiculous. If a trade deal with Canada is beneficial for American people, then we should do it, regardless of Canada's stance on Palestine, because it doesn't affect American people. So the benefit of the American people should be the guiding principle here. And I completely agree that Palestine has nothing to do with Canadians or Americans. But if this trade deal would be good for Americans, Trump should pursue it regardless of their stance on another country across the other side of the planet. And also, tariffs have been weaponized for other countries as well. So here you can see Canada tariffs, they were supposed to be 25% on August 1st, but instead of the Palestine announcement, they were raised to 35%. And who knows if these are even going to be in effect 2 weeks from now or 1 month from now. Donald Trump will probably flip-flop with this again quite soon. But then there was also the case with Brazil, where Brazil actually has a surplus with America, meaning that they actually buy more stuff from United States than they sell into United States. So they previously had a 10% tariff, but because there is a lawsuit against Brazil's former president, who was Donald Trump's buddy, Donald Trump decided that he wants to tax the American people more because there is a lawsuit in Brazil against their former president. So this is basically punishing the American people for something that is happening to Donald Trump's buddy in another country. So you can start to understand why this is a little bit funny from my perspective and silly, but this is the reality we live in today. So 50% tariff on Brazil, a 50% tariff on certain copper products, and also there was a suspension of tax perks, something called a de minimis treatment for all countries. So there was a loophole previously where if you bought under a certain dollar value of products into United States, then you did not have to pay the import taxes, the tariffs. But now that has been suspended, which means that there is no minimum for taxation for tariffs. So you have to pay taxes on every single product, even if it's $5, from my understanding of this executive order from now on. And this obviously caused a price shock in the markets as well. The markets are not happy for this move here. Then another example of weaponizing tariffs is with the Ukraine-Russia war. So US president has threatened to impose a 100% secondary tariffs on any country that buys Russian exports if there is no peace deal with Russia and Ukraine. So again, the Donald Trump is threatening to impose taxes on American people if Russia doesn't make peace with Ukraine. And that doesn't make any sense, especially when you consider a 100% tariff. Previously, when they tried to make 100% or more tariff against China, they basically backed down immediately because they realized they cannot actually impose this. And India and China, who are buying Russian exports because they cannot stop buying energy from Russia because there is nothing to fill that void if they stop buying Russian energy. India already came out that they can sacrifice the trade with USA, but they cannot stop their citizens from using energy in their country because necessity is much more important than a luxury trade deal with the United States. So they cannot make this trade deal. And if Trump goes ahead and imposes this tariff, that is just creating more uncertainty for the markets. And I think he will have to back down from this. But this is just an example of weaponizing tariffs. And now, previously, he said that Putin has 50 days to reach a peace agreement. But now he has backtracked and said he only has 10 to 12 days to make a deal. So when you watch this video, it's only going to be one more week that Trump basically has to back down from this tariff sanction weaponization, or he will have to do it, and nobody knows what he is planning to do or what he decides to do. And basically, it's just the tax again on Americans. And then, continuing, Jerome Powell is the reason why he is not cutting interest rates is that he is saying that these tariffs actually cause inflation. So if these tariffs were not in place, he could already cut interest rates. And that would make borrowing cheaper for United States. That would make it easier for US-based businesses to access loans because the loans would be more favorable. But because of these tariffs, which cause inflation because they increase prices, that is inflationary. And that is why the interest rates are still high in the United States. Donald Trump obviously blames Jerome Powell for not cutting the interest rates, but he doesn't take any responsibility for the tariffs which cause inflation. So that is another misconception from the tariff discussion. Now there is the other flip side actually for tariffs. They cause inflation directly, but they also cause deflation. I will come to that very, very soon. But it basically causes both inflation and deflation. But I will get to that soon. Then let's actually talk about the situation between let me see here. So this is the Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, and he says that these tariff revenues are amazing, $700 billion per year, up to $7 trillion in 10 years. So whenever they talk about these numbers, most often they are bogus. And this is just one example of these numbers being bogus, because when you actually take a look at the real number of income coming from tariffs, the red line is the year 2025. And as you can see, after 5 months, the tariff revenue has been $127 billion compared to $55 billion it was in 2024. So the tariff revenue has roughly doubled and gone a little bit higher than double since the implementation of these Donald Trump's tariffs. So what we're basically looking for is about maybe up to $300 billion in tariff revenue for the year 2025, but I believe it will go down over time because the imports into United States will taper down because of these tariff policies as well. So what Lutnick is basically saying here is a clear over-exaggeration for at least 2x, probably even more than 2x. And it's not going to be $7 trillion in 10 years. These tariffs will be walked back on much earlier than that. So whenever you see these numbers from the Trump administration, most often they are bogus. Just keep that in mind. Now, let's actually examine some use cases of tariffs in the past, how they have behaved, and to get the reality of the ramifications of using tariffs excessively. So in 1930, there was the Tariff Act. And during that time, the import taxes were roughly 40 to 47%. And in the year 1930, the Great Depression basically started in 1929 already. So there was a recession coming, but these tariff policies were basically a cherry on top of that. So the GDP declined by about 25% during the Great Depression. And many people attribute part of the global economic crisis to this exact tariff policy here. So the idea why they wanted to do this is they wanted to protect the American industry, they wanted to help the American people, and they enabled this Tariff Act. And then the next president who came into power saw the tariff policy and immediately took it off because it was not working. So by 1933, the tariffs were taken off and the Great Depression ended. Or was it 1932? It was taken off. So what actually happened after 1930 is that the imports into United States fell by over 40% during that time. But not the whole Great Depression can be attributed to the tariff policies. It is said here that only a third of the total imports into the United States were subject to the tariffs. And the tariffs the products that were tariffed only represented about 1.4% of the GDP in United States. So that was not the cause of the Great Depression. However, there was a counter effect to the tariffs, which was the provoking of international retaliation from other countries to these tariff policies, and that reduced global trade. And when global trade gets reduced, that brings deflation. And this is what I said earlier, that they are inflationary, but they are also deflationary. So when global trade is reduced because of tariff policies, that is causing deflation, and that is bringing about a depression, as you can see, as we saw here. Now, this was not the only time tariffs were used. It was used another time as well. In 1897, there was the Dingley Tariff Act. And this was another short-lived attempt of using tariffs, and they used again a rate of 47% on average. And the idea here was to shield the steel industry in the United States from foreign competition. The idea was good, but what happened is that the steel producers benefited. They suddenly were able to raise prices and rake in more profits. They got more customers, but what happened is that the products started to cost more because they got a monopoly in United States. They weren't subject to foreign companies competing for that market anymore. And the higher steel prices made it more expensive to build infrastructure in the United States, which slowed down growth in other industries, mainly railroads, which are not that great in the United States at the moment, and some other industries as well. So businesses that depended on steel faced financial strain. So the tariffs, they create winners and losers at the same time. And here they actually say who wins and who loses from the tariffs. So let's read this out so you get a little bit better understanding. So domestic manufacturers in protected industries, they benefit. But and also politicians and local governments win because they can claim that they support American industry and they can claim that they support American jobs, even though the real effect is the opposite. They harm the American people, they harm the American industry in large parts, but they can claim that they support the American people. And then this is a real opportunity for some companies who were not able to start up their own companies because foreign companies had just better prices and better representation in your country. But since the tariffs were implemented, some newcomers were able to basically infiltrate the market inside the United States and start up new shops. So this is a good effect as well. So there are some winners here, but in general, this creates monopolies in the country that uses tariffs, which raises prices, and overall that is not good for the health of the economy. And then I already said I made a lengthy post back in April 11 in 2025 where I talked about the architect to Trump's tariff policy, Stephen Miran. So in November 2024, there was a paper that came out that basically laid out the guide how to implement these different tariffs. And this is the document here. As you can see, this is November 2024, a user's guide to restructuring the global trading system. And then is 40 pages of nuanced explanations how the tariffs supposedly work and how to basically negotiate with different countries, what is the maximum tariff, and all these different things. The first thing from this paper to look at is this sentence here. Once tariffs begin increasing beyond 20%, they become welfare reducing, which means that any tariff beyond 20%, if it has a marginal benefit for your country, beyond 20%, they become worse for the people of United States. And Donald Trump has completely discarded this warning from this paper, and he is just implementing 30% tariffs, 50% tariffs, even up to 100% tariffs across the board. Also, there are some other nuances in that paper which I critiqued very heavily in this post, and I will read some of those out here. So I'm happy that in that paper they had thought of some downside risks for extensive tariff policy and possible negotiating tools for those tariffs. Those were good things. Also, I'm happy that the paper recognized that retaliationary tariffs are bad and should be avoided. So you don't want to get into a fight with another country, basically where you raise tariffs, then that country raises tariffs, you raise tariffs, that country raises tariffs. You want to avoid that kind of situation as best as you can. And this has obviously been thrown out the window for the most parts as well, as we saw with the China-US face-off. And then, this is very important, trade deficit, which Donald Trump wants to fix. Trade deficit is actually a good thing for you if you have the world's reserve currency. And this is very, very, very important because the paper does not understand this point. So Donald Trump does not understand the Triffin dilemma. So what is the Triffin dilemma? This was invented in the 1960s already. And what it says is that a country whose currency is the global reserve currency, which is held by other nations as a foreign exchange reserve to support and facilitate international trade. You have to somehow supply the world with your reserve currency. Because if you don't supply the world with your currency, then the world is lacking in the reserve currency and they cannot fulfill their debt obligations, and that basically facilitates a collapse of the reserve currency status of your currency. So Donald Trump does not understand this, that a ongoing trade deficit is a must for United States. So in 1970s, when the United States were taken off the gold standard and they had the petrodollar system afterwards, they entered into a permanent transformation from a creditor country into a debtor nation. So you have to run trade deficits. So what you do is you send out paper currency that you print out of thin air, and people use it for trading, for debt, for many things. And in return, you get all of the stuff, all of the services into your country. And this is the best deal ever because you basically don't do anything and other people just send you stuff. So that's why United States is so rich compared to other countries. They print out paper currency out of thin air, and other countries are happy to send in their goods, their labor, their fruit into United States. But if there is a trade balance and there is not a trade deficit, then over time the foreign countries will run out of their dollar reserves. And when that happens, the value of the dollar shoots up, which creates the deflationary cycle. It hasn't happened yet, but it will eventually happen if this keeps on going. And that basically collapses the status of the United States as the world's reserve currency. And while this is why Bitcoin has been going up in value. This is why gold has been going up in value, because the trade war, this tariff war, is undermining the status of the dollar as the reserve currency. And the Donald Trump administration does not understand this point. So that is the Triffin dilemma. Then also, the paper goes ahead and consistently emphasizes the importance of achieving a trade balance. So I'm not sure if Donald Trump actually wants United States to not be the world's reserve currency, because in his rhetoric, he always says that every country must use the dollar. But he doesn't want countries to have the dollars. So he doesn't want to run a deficit, but at the same time, he wants people to keep using the dollar. It doesn't make sense. It's a contradiction. So it doesn't recognize the downsides of achieving a trade balance. So, and also the paper claims that the tariffs present minimal inflation, which again I said is not true, but it also creates a deflation down the line when foreign countries will start running out of their dollar reserves. So that is eventually causing deflation, but as of now, it is creating inflation. And also there was no mentions of a bond market reaction to all of this madness, and that dynamic that was completely left out in the dark. And that basically is why Donald Trump is lashing out against Jerome Powell, because the bond market don't want to pay less interest rates for the United States debt as of now. So that's why the Fed is also keeping the interest rates high. So all in all, it is a hot mess from the get-go, and Donald Trump is just doubling down on all of this. If we summarize all of this, tariff is an import tax. And also, tariffs, they are income for government. So this is a good thing. It's an income for government, obviously, it's a great thing. Then it protects certain industries. That's also a good thing. It creates opportunities for new companies in United States. That is also great. But then for the downsides, it basically allows you to create more domestic production for the domestic market. But it does not help you have production for the foreign markets, because the tariffs create more costs for production in the United States. So if, for example, you're an American business and you want to sell in the European Union, you probably want to have a shop in European Union, because you don't have to pay these insane tariffs. So yes, it brings manufacturing back, but only for products that you will ultimately sell into United States. That is basically the bad thing. Then it is a tax on Americans, and it is a tax on American companies. It creates uncertainty, especially with Donald Trump, because you have no idea what he does this week compared to what he does next week. It creates inflation, but also it reduces global trade, and it reduces the foreign the dollar amounts in foreign accounts, and overall it creates deflation eventually that way. And reducing trade is very bad for the world as well. It creates monopolies in your own country, and it basically weaponization of tariffs is the last point, that this is not what you want to do. This was also mentioned in the guide, that when you weaponize tariffs, it basically doesn't make people bend into your will. It makes people look the other way and find other solutions. And that's basically why many countries are now doubling down on the BRICS partnership and taking their trade out from the United States, and trying to basically reduce their risk to United States by buying gold, by buying Bitcoin, by buying Chinese products instead of American products. Now there are some countries, areas like the European Union, the UK, and even Canada who submit to United States will, and they will obviously be harmed from all of these policies eventually as well. But all of this is not good in my opinion. The net effect is negative all around, and the biggest uh, uh, the most harm that these policies do is for the American people and for the American companies. And I don't understand why this is still the top policy that Donald Trump continuously goes back on, and he really wants all of these tariffs to go back to the upside. Historically, they have not worked. They have not done what they were supposed to do, and they will not do so this time either. Now, if you like this video, consider giving me the likes up and consider subscribing to this channel. Normally, I talk about crypto, Bitcoin, and sometimes geopolitics, and this video, I hope, was something that you liked as well. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.